Hey y'all, what is going on? What is going on? It's your girl, Melba Pearson, Melba from Miami, Melba for Justice, also known as the resident legal diva. And it is time for another Mondays with Melba. Super excited to have Moms4Libros back on again this week because we have so much to talk about. There was a school board meeting that was super intense. This had been on previously to kind of give us the heads up that this was coming. So now we're going to dive into what happened and what's next. So I am so excited. Lissette, Vanessa, thank you so much for coming on. And I am turning it over to you. Tell us a little bit about yourselves as well as Moms4Libros, and then we'll transition into talking about the school board meeting.
Thanks for having us on. Vanessa, why don't you get started this time about the school board meeting?
The school board meeting that lasted way too long. And I see the school board meeting that, what was it, 2 weeks ago?
Yeah.
And so there was an item that was proposed by Lucia Baez-Geller, and it was just asking for a ceremonial LGBT Heritage Month without in-classroom instruction, and just celebrating the lives and the triumphs and victories of the LGBTQ plus community. And I have never seen so many people show up, and oh my God, Lissette, the audio, I don't know if you guys can hear it, the wind.
Oh, hang on, I can probably. Yeah, we can mute. No worries. Listen, okay. We're in real time here at Mondays with Melba. Real time, real life.
So we had so many people show up on both sides, but mostly we had a lot of folks from Moms for Liberty and sympathizers who were really just trying to push their religious and political views on the school board. What is sad to me, and I said this, I don't know if I said this to Lissette or somebody else, a couple days later, was the board voted down the item. So there will not be an LGBT Heritage Month that will be honored in Miami-Dade County Public Schools. But the outcome, I think, would have been the same whether more people who were advocating for Heritage Month showed up, or whether no one showed up, or everybody showed up. I think the outcome would have been the same. And I think that is a testament to just how politically driven all of these groups have really been. It's funny because we're a group, right? But we don't consider ourselves politically driven. We're more, it's a very pragmatic approach. That is who Moms4Libros is. We're two rational women who grew up, who are products of the public education system here in Miami-Dade County, who literally just want kids to have the same access to education and same materials that we've always had, without politicizing, without bringing in all these ideological references and ideological pushes and into the school system, because it doesn't work that way. That is not, we have a separation of church and state, but that is not what we saw 2 weeks ago. And Lissette was there personally, and I know I don't want to say what I'm going to say or whatever, but yeah, I know she was angry, and I know she had to really hold back, because the amount of disrespect and almost like that, how emotional you become to see that there is so much hate from groups that tend to be far more religious, and they behave as the antithesis of what they purport to be, right? So it was a very sad day at the school board 2 weeks ago.
It was really hard to see it, because it was literally like a lot of these Christian extremist groups, almost like they bust them all in to talk about all this hatred towards LGBTQ people. And it was funny because it was a huge gaslight in how they were saying, this isn't about hatred. We support LGBTQ people, but we just don't want it in our schools. I mean, It's kind of like you're saying you don't support LGBTQ people, but with that, because there are LGBTQ children that you're basically not supporting and saying that.
Like, it's so funny. Let
me pause for a second, because I think we need to drill down a little bit more. Vanessa, you touched on this. This was honoring this was LGBTQ month without in-class instruction. So basically,
Right.
what would that have meant for students in the school system? Like, why was this so important?
I mean, typically what happens when you have like a ceremonial month like that, think of it as, and I'm not equating this by any means, but like breast cancer awareness, suicide awareness, like you just have things around the school, like, you have little posters and, so-and-so did this, Caitlyn Jenner did that. I can't believe I just said her name. And, just things like that where, but it is a member of the LGBT community who accomplished such and such thing. This is not like these parents went into the school board, and I hate to be so frank, suggesting that we were going to have placards of how to engage in sexual relations. Like, oh, that's not what I want my kid. Like that is what they were saying. Like that is what they were suggesting. They actually expressed that. They said, my child doesn't need to know how two gay people have sex or anything. And I'm like, is that what it is? I mean, is that because last I checked? So, and again, not to be crude, but if we're talking about suicide awareness, are we going to talk about, the graphic part of that, of what that means? And the crude part, of course not. We are talking about these people exist and they've done great things despite being treated the way that you're treating them. And I think, like, I'm gay, and so I was watching and I'm like, these people have really said that if I sit next to their kid on the bus, it's gonna rub off. I think that's really sad.
Like the arguments we used to make about HIV and AIDS back in the day, that, oh, if you sit on a toilet seat, you're gonna get it. Like, all of this ignorance.
Right. Ignorance.
Stop. So,
and it's not just like that ignorance, but it's like, well, so I'm gay, so all of my accomplishments are gay related. Like, that's not even, you need to show kids that despite being different, or like, everybody has different upbringings and everybody has different hurdles that they have to overcome. All of my accomplishments have nothing to do with the LGBTQ community. As a matter of fact, it's probably I'm not even like part of any large organization, but nobody would ever know unless we talked about those things openly. So how do you know what people have done in their lives, and despite what they've been through, if we don't talk about it?
Absolutely.
It doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, because again, we think about the accomplishments of James Baldwin, arguably one of the best writers in American history, identifies himself from the LGBT community. Bayard Rustin, who was one of the architects of the March on Washington, where Dr. King gave his amazing speech, was a member of the LGBTQ community. Harvey Milk, first, openly gay mayor of a major city in San Francisco, has buildings named after him, right? Like, so putting that on a poster and putting that into schools so that students are aware of key moments in American history is somehow problematic and divisive. Okay, sorry, Lissette, back to you, because I know you're getting into the real-time things that are happening in the school board, but I just wanted to make sure people understood that context of what exactly was being asked for and what was now being denied by certain members of the school board.
Sorry. So I'm trying to keep because I'm outside, as you can tell, because my husband is quarantined with COVID, so I'm trying to manage the error that comes into the phone. But yeah, so it was I mean, being there at the school board meeting and having, as a heterosexual woman, having to listen to all these people, just the way they were talking about LGBTQ students and how they weren't even recognizing that they exist was, I mean, it had me out for a few days. I had to mentally deal with what they were all saying and that kind of hatred, and just the thought that, what if my children end up being part of the LGBTQ community? What if they end up being gay? What kind of a future are we providing for them when this is the type of hatred that is in our community still to this day in 2023 towards LGBTQ people? I mean, we've learned in the past through the AIDS crisis. I grew up in the middle of the AIDS crisis. I went to school watching the AIDS quilt on TV. I mean, it was it was openly spoken about because it was a matter of public health. Now all of a sudden it's, you know, you got to be pushed back into the closet. I think that's wrong. I think it's completely wrong, and I can't believe that we're back to ascribing to the whole push them back into the closet philosophy within our communities. It's just really
I mean, it's happening with slavery. Oh, slavery didn't happen. No big deal. Gay people, they don't exist.
Great for you. Yeah.
Yeah, like it's all anybody who's not white Christian and I'm Catholic, so it breaks my heart to say this, and the set knows that I'm like a hardcore Catholic, but if you're not white and Christian, then you don't matter, and you probably shouldn't even exist. But we're tolerating you by keeping you alive, like, or not killing you. Like, that's where we're at today,
Wow.
and in this state, sadly.
And this is, and one of the more tragic things, there's so many tragic aspects to this, but PEN America, which is an organization that looks at book banning and censorship in America, has basically come out and said that in the last year, 40% of the books that have been banned in this country have been banned in Florida. So,
it's funny because when you hear the rhetoric around that, you hear a lot of people saying, oh, well, it's because we want to take pornography out of schools. There's no pornography in schools.
No.
What is being removed is books on human growth and development, books on teaching kids about their developing bodies, things like, what sex is and what can happen to sex. So for example, if you look at the statistics of when kids start having sex, by 9th grade, 19% of high schoolers have already had sex. By the time they graduate, 57% of them have had sex. So now we're going back to an instance of abstinence-only education without teaching them about STIs, without teaching them about how to have safe sex, and without even teaching them about what can happen to their bodies and what all is involved, so that they can get hurt, get diseased, and get pregnant. So these are the types of books that are being removed from our schools right now. And it's really sad because we're doing kids a huge disservice. And even worse than that, if I have all the statistics that I got from the Guttmacher Institute. These abstinence-only programs, which is things that are happening here in Florida. Florida has an abstinence-only sex ed curriculum. It's a heteronormative education. It doesn't frame LGBTQ students. It frames them as deviant. And so right there, you're telling kids that if they're part of the LGBTQ community, there's something wrong with you. Yeah. And things like that is what leads to higher instances of suicide attempts or successful suicides, because let's be honest, it happens. And it's not right that we should be teaching kids like this. It's not. They need to know, in order for kids to be able to be successful, in order for them to be able to, if they want to be sexually active in high school, 57% of kids are sexually active in high school. That's a large chunk of kids. We should be showing them that, they need to protect themselves. We need to be showing them the ways of not to get pregnant, because that ruins, it can ruin their lives. It can ruin their future. And we should be showing them that being, part of the LGBTQ community is not something to be ashamed of.
Right. And
these are the kinds of books that people like Moms for Liberty or Citizens Defending Freedom are trying to ban from public schools. That same article by PEN America came out and said that this year the banned books included books on physical abuse, so domestic violence, health and well-being, and themes of grief and death.
Yeah.
Why are we not teaching about the human experience? Because that's what that is.
And kids are experiencing that. Like,
and kids are experiencing
that passed away, their grandmother passes away. They don't know how to deal with these emotions. and they may not be ready to talk about it, but maybe if you hand them a book that they're able to read and start processing, that can inform discussions to make sure that they don't take out their grief in, unfortunately, a violent way, right? Because
Exactly.
hurt people. So
or into internalize
So
it and
if
do themselves harm.
so, if there's a school shooting and you lose a classmate, don't have access to literature that will help you get through that, which will make you angry, and potentially repeat the same behavior. See, I don't. To me, like it's so. I don't. So a lot of what I see with these groups is that there is no long-term thinking. They're thinking about their bottom line is, funny enough, it is indoctrination and making sure that they change and mold kids to fit what they expect them and what they would want their own children to be and what they think is right. So but they're not thinking about the long-term effects, which again, this is why it's so politicized, because what do politicians do is they don't think long term. They think short term, instant gratification. I want this and this is what I'm going to do to get it. Now, if there's a mental health impact that comes along 10 years down the line, they don't care about that because they want what they want right now and it doesn't matter how it affects them. And the fact that it's not just books on human growth and development, a good chunk of a good percentage of these books are either written by people who are by Black authors, Hispanic authors. I'd like to know, and I've been harping on this since the day I found it, why the Little Rock Nine has been banned from a school. Like I still, as a kid, I remember the Disney movie, and that was always one of the movies that made me want to go to college. I'm not Black. Watching that movie didn't make me appropriate or do anything or feel any type of way other than I want to go to college. Like I want to do something with my life. I still remember like the impact seeing that movie had on me, and I know that it would have the similar impact because it's such a beautiful story, right? On kids who want to have an experience or who are even pushing. You don't have to live the same experience. Some kids are living in a household where their parents want them to stay at home and don't want them to go away to college. Like another book that was banned was I'm Not Your Mexican Daughter or something. I think that's the name. I don't know if that's the correct name. And I was like, well, maybe
Mexican Daughter.
I'm Not Your Perfect Mexican Daughter. So of course my assumption is, well, they banned it because the girl's lesbian or something, because that's what you assume, right? That these people, no, they complained about it because the girl does not want to stay home, cook and clean, and she wants to go to college in a Hispanic household. And I'm like, and that is where you realize that this is not just about minorities. This is about a lifestyle and building a society. This is reorganizing society in a way. They've got the building blocks, right? This isn't about just the Black community, the LGBT community, the Hispanic community. No, this is about an entire conceptual change of what they feel society should look like. And that's what's scary, because they're willing to go to any length, whether their kid, ends up not being able to make it through college, unsuccessful, not career driven because they didn't have the tools and the resources when they were in school, as long as they get what they want and society mimics what they feel it should. That is wrong.
They want to push women back in the kitchen and the LGBTQ back in the closet.
Yeah.
It's like the Handmaid's Tale, all
over. 100%.
So I know there's another school board meeting coming up in the next week or so, and there's something massive that's going to be on the agenda. Do you want to talk a little bit more about that and what sort of that next battle is going to be?
Well, there's a special meeting on Wednesday that is specifically on the social study textbooks. I was actually talking to my son about this because apparently his social studies class does not have textbooks yet. They're waiting on this meeting that's happening on Wednesday for them to be able to use textbooks.
For the record, today is Monday, September 25th. School has been in session for nearly a month. And
since August 17th, so it's been a session for over a month, and they still do not have social studies textbooks.
Shameful. Continue.
But yes, so the social studies textbook meeting the special meeting will take place on this Wednesday at 1 o'clock at the school board building. It was originally scheduled to be at Booker T. Washington High School, but I found out through my contacts that it has been moved to the school board building. And basically it's to approve the school books. They also have, and I'll send you the link so you can post on the YouTube. They do have the books where you can review them online. It's a lot of material. I don't know if anybody's going to have time to go over it at this point for the school board meeting, for the meeting on Wednesday. But, you know.
But the Wednesday meeting does have the African American Studies curriculum, right? The standards, is the education standards, are those on there?
It will be, but I don't think it's going to go as in depth. I really don't know. You know, the agenda that they put up on the website is not very comprehensive, so it's hard to tell what they're going to speak about.
Yeah.
Which is problematic.
It could be anything.
Right. I mean, we were told, and we were expecting the new African American Study Standards to come, you know, to be in play on Wednesday. So that does include that new rule on the benefits to slavery. I can't even believe that I'm saying that.
I mean, it would make sense if it's, you know, for the social studies.
Right.
Book. It would make sense that they would discuss.
That's why we're asking people to join, because Lissette and I were talking, and you know, when you get to the point of, it's really not going to make a difference. It's a state standard. It just needs to be adopted with slight tweaks, but they can't change conceptually what it's saying.
Right.
But I think it is important for people to voice their opinion.
Yes.
And their discontent and their disapproval. I mean, if we don't, you know, I'm an advocate of speaking up, even if you're not going to get immediate change, because if you stay silent to an injustice, then you're just an accomplice to that injustice, right? And so it's important that and that's another thing. It is important that parents, not just in the Black community, come out and speak out against this, right? And I know that there's many people who are upset, but just because things may not affect you directly, like you as a person or your ancestors, does not mean that it is not an infringement of like your, I guess, self-worth as a human and humanity. Like this is to me like an issue of humanity and what is right and what is wrong. Stand up for what is right, whether you have a real understanding of what it means. But if you know something is wrong, show up and speak. And the more people that do that, you know, that's how you move the needle. But it needs to happen regularly and over time, you know.
And that's so critical, Vanessa, because number one, it's a slippery slope, right? So if you don't speak out when it's, you know, an African-American issue, and you don't speak out when it is maybe an LGBTQ issue, well, when it becomes an immigrant issue and you're an immigrant yourself, you know, now you're looking around looking for allies to help you, and maybe already fatigued because they've gone through all these other fights. Nothing's happened. So by the time it gets to you, there's less people willing and able to fight. So there's that. There's also the fact that at the end of the day, if you're silent, silent equals complicity. So at least we've been on record repeatedly saying this is not what the people want. This is not what the majority of the people want. And we keep hammering that message home so that eventually when, first of all, look back in history, it wasn't like we all sat there like, oh, well, our rights are getting taken away. So be it. We fought, right? Somebody stood up.
Right.
And then secondly, that when it comes time for the next administration, because again, this governor's termed out 2026, it's a wrap, right? So when the next administration comes, they know that there is data showing this is not what the people want. So you have that support to be able to roll back these policies because you know that is not what the predominance of voters want. So these are all things we have to think about strategically in the long term as well as in the short term. So yeah.
People can get discouraged, you know. I think part of what Lissette and I, and we feed off each other a lot because it is easy to get discouraged. So sometimes I'll call her, she'll call me, and we're yelling or crying or both, or laughing, crying, and yelling all in one. And we're like, you know, just let's leave, let's go. Because, and so it's hard to, if it's hard for us because, and we're doing it all the time, all day, 24/7. I can imagine how discouraging it may be for a parent who is just hearing just a couple of minutes of the conversation we've had today can discourage somebody and say, you know what, this day has gone to, and I don't even know that me showing up is going to make a difference, but it does. So if more people show up, then, then you have a big group of people. But if, people start falling off and feeling discouraged and apathetic, it is easy to give into apathy. But the moment we give into apathy, what we're doing is highlighting and letting the small group of extremists shine brighter than the rest of us who are a much larger group. We just need to be able to find a way to not let what is happening in the state and these bad policies, okay, discourage us from, if you can't show up, write a letter. If you can't write a letter, write an email. If you can't write an email or send a text, make a phone call, whatever it is. There are ways to deal and be involved without it inconveniencing your everyday. That's why people like Lissette and I exist. We go, we show up, we yell, we scream, we make videos, we do this, we do that. But we also can't do it alone, and It can't just be our face. It has to be the parents who are really going to be affected. I'd hate to see my neighbor with, who has a 5-year-old a couple years from now say, well, my daughter's reading level is incredibly low. It's hard to think about what is going to happen in the future. So it's encouraging folks to not let the apathy get to them. And I know it's hard to say that, but it does take a village.
Yeah. And Vanessa's forgetting something really important. You need to register to vote. You need to register to vote. You need to vote. Yeah. You need to register for vote by mail. You need to do all the things, because the reason why we're in the mess that we're in is because people did not show up.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. So to wrap up our amazing session today, just so folks know, I'm going to drop links in the comments or in the chat with regards to the link to Moms4Libros, so that you can get on their email list and stay involved, follow them on socials. Also going to drop the link to remind you to check your vote by mail status, because remember, as a result of a law that was recently passed, your vote by mail status does not carry over through as many elections as it used to. So your status may have expired already, so double check that. But Lissette, Vanessa, can you give people the ways to be able to contact you, follow you, and to be able to take action at the next school board meeting?
That's Lissette's job.
So we are Moms, the number 4, Libros, Libros, on every social media, even YouTube. So you can find us there. And we have links to our link tree where we have a bunch of different resources and articles that you can go to. Actually, come to think of it, I'm probably going to put links now to register to vote and vote by mail on our link tree. Well, I remember now. So people can do that as well. So yeah, just reach out to us. I think we have our email on there as well. So if you want to message privately, you can as well. Reach out to us. We are available just about 24/7. So yeah, just contact.
There is no secretary. There is no. It's just us. And on top of registering to vote and updating vote by mail, that happens every 2 years. So every 2 years, voters who want to vote by mail, they have to renew. But on top of that, we're seeing a new issue, and that's updating the voter signature. So I just reviewed a list of petition forms that were rejected because the signature didn't match. So I'm encouraging, and this goes for anybody who votes from home and of all parties, okay? If the signature does not match, if the signature outside your envelope does not match what's on file, your ballot can be rejected. So as sad as that is, I'm glad that we caught it now. And we're going to be doing, Lisette's going to be doing a reel, because she's the real queen, on updating, on how to update your signature, because it is something that is new, I think, for voters, and incredibly important to have your voice counted.
Thank you for that. Oh my gosh, Lissette, Vanessa, Moms4Libros, y'all rock. Thank you for all that you're doing. I encourage everybody, get involved. At the very least, follow, share the information. And if you can do more, send a text, send an email to the school board members. And my last thing would be to say, if you like how a school board member voted, send them an email thanking them for it.
Yes.
If they
And ask questions.
Exactly. If they introduced a bill or a resolution or something and it failed, you still thank them anyway, because they need to hear that, reassurance that, listen, this is what the people want. You weren't off base. We support you. So, because it's easy to get discouraged, not only as an advocate or an activist in this movement, but as an elected official who feels like you're screaming into the wind, right? So giving them that encouragement is really important to encourage good people to run and to continue to run for re-election. So with that, Moms4Libros, y'all rock. Thank you. Thank you to everyone for tuning in, and we'll see you next week. Take care. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.